Hey, how's it going? And today this is just a super quick video about why I think it's important to learn animation in Unreal Engine, especially if you're going to be making films or games, even games, because you'll be creating cutscenes and stories. And I've been studying Unreal now for about 2 years, and every day I'm learning more and more and more, and there's just a ton of stuff to learn, and it's constantly changing. One of the things that's become apparent is the importance of animation. So right now my interests are primarily drifting toward making 3D short animated films. And one thing that's kind of inescapable of all that is the importance of animation, because at the end of the day, the one thing that you're going to need to be able to do is to move your characters in the scene. Working the camera and figuring out the sequencer and the take recorder and the lighting and the environments, I don't want to say it's easy, but you can kind of machete your way through all that. But animation really is a thick, deep topic, and it takes a lot of time to really get your mind around everything. So with that said, I just want to share with you a couple insights that I've gained over the last several months regarding the importance of animation, and just briefly kind of exploring some options. I made this little chart here, but basically I broke it down like this. There's 3 broad categories of animation for the 3D solo artist. So the first one I would say is what we'd call hand or keyframe animation. This would be similar to stop motion. What this is you're working basically frame by frame. In Unreal Engine, you'd be using the control rig. You might also be using the animation sequence editor, where you're literally going frame by frame and adjusting the character to make certain movements. You could also be blending movements together and things like that, but it's basically kind of a stop motion, hand by hand. That type of animation, that hand animation, is kind of like old school that you'd see like with Disney, and used to do it by drawing. Mickey Mouse, I think, was like the first animated cartoon or something like that. The cost for that, if you're doing that yourself, the cost of that is cheap. No cost to that. That just takes your time and sitting in front of the computer and keyframing out all those animations. So that's, the cost is low, but the time is high, because that takes a long time to learn. It takes a lot of knowledge of animation. So that's kind of, when I think of animation, that's one of the first things that comes into mind, is that hand animation, that keyframing frame by frame, which is a skill in and of itself. That's the one category. But keep in mind, cost is low, but the time to do it is high. The next kind of in the middle is what I would call pre-recorded animations, and these would be like Mixamo animations you can buy off the marketplace, BVH files and things like that. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube about these kinds of animations, and these are real handy, but they tend to be limited. They're little, just short little single behaviors, and to really make something of them, you'd have to blend them, take them into Unreal Engine again, create a blend space, or go into the animation sequencer and put them all together, or record a new sequence out and things like that. So that's not exactly easiest thing, but it's a lot faster than hand animating. So that using those pre-recorded animations is not a bad middle ground in there. You're kind of limited in the fact that to the animations that are available, but then you can get creative and kind of blend them and still modify them. That's kind of a middle ground. And some of them are free, but some of them also cost money. So there's a little bit of cost associated with some of those animations. And then the last one is motion capture. And that would be things like the Rococo suit, the neuron perception, the Xsense, the Move AI, some of the software that's coming out, optical markers, markerless systems. And the thing with the motion capture is that's the most expensive system. But once you got the system set up and running, it's probably the most time effective, because you can capture the entire animation right there, and then you just have to translate it over into your 3D character. So motion capture is the most expensive, but probably the most efficient in terms of time. So you kind of just have to figure out where you rank in here as far as what you want to learn in animation. How much time do you have? How much money do you have? And kind of calculate those two things together to kind of figure out where do you need to focus in at. And it could be that these aren't mutually exclusive areas. You could get in, learn a little bit of hand. You could take pre-recorded and modify those by hand. You could also get into motion capture and maybe just render out a few animations that are more difficult to do by hand. So these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but then you'd have to know about all 3 broad areas. What I notice as a trend is this trend towards motion capture. Even though it's the most expensive, it's the most efficient in terms of time. And I want to look at something real quick here. 2 gentlemen that I'm aware of. One is this gentleman by the name of J.C. Cornwell, who I believe works at DreamWorks. He has this really great channel on YouTube called 3D Education with JC, and he has a very popular tutorial on making your first movie with Unreal Engine. He was in the Unreal Fellowship, and he created this short film called Car Seeds, and he used the Xsense motion capture system for it. So for the animation in this film, he used motion capture. So that kind of weighed in my head, okay, motion capture. He used it for his film, and he seems like a very logical, pragmatic, efficient person. I think he bought almost several of his assets from the marketplace or acquired them through the marketplace. And that's one check mark in favor of motion capture. Now, if we look at this gentleman here, this guy is Aaron Sims Creative. He created this short film. He was actually, I believe he was actually sponsored by Unreal Engine to create a short film in Unreal Engine, and it's a pretty good film, 5 minutes long or something like that. And there's actually a course you can take. You can actually watch, I think, the first 2 hours. You can sign up through this GNOME workshop or whatever and watch. He kind of walks you through what he did. But the first 2 hours are free, and then after that you'd have to pay for this, and he kind of walks you through what he did. Very interestingly, he also used the motion capture as well. So now you have two relatively prominent individuals, one who was contracted by Epic Games to make a short film, another that was in the fellowship, and both of them used motion capture for their solution to animation in their short films. I think taking into account, this equation here of the cost versus the time. And so that's just something that you have to decide for yourself. The bottom line of all this is that animation is an essential skill to learn, especially if you're going to want to make short films or make cutscenes or anything like that. And you just have to figure out where in this spectrum do you fit in. How much money do you have to spend, and how much time do you have to spend, and what is the most realistic option for you? Now, for my channel going forward, I'm actually leaning toward motion capture. And of all the systems that I've seen so far, I'm really liking Move AI the most, just because it seems relatively affordable and I don't have to get a suit. And it seems like you can get a lot of animation out of it once you get the basic. That may change too. I may switch to a different system. There's also this Mocapi system that I'm looking at. That's another one that's, I think, about $500 from Sony. But that only has 6 sensors, and I'm not sure how accurate that is. So that might be good for just basic motion capture animations. And then I'm also kind of looking heavy into these pre-recorded animations, because that seems like a very efficient way to get some nice animation relatively quick if you just know how to blend them together and modify those. And then with creative editing, you might not even need to do motion capture. And you could just use the Mixamo rigs to get all the animation that you need. But again, you're very limited with that approach. So somewhere in there, my least favorite option right now is hand individual keyframing animations, but I realize you need to know that anyway, because you may want to tweak your motion capture or your pre-recorded animations. So no matter how you go, you're going to have to learn a little hand animation, because you're going to undoubtedly come across animations that you're going to need to tweak. So again, it's just a question of how much time do I want to invest in this. And so I'll probably lean more toward motion capture. Then on maybe it's a quick and dirty project, I'll do recorded animations. If it's just a simple 1 or 2 behaviors that I need, that might even be faster. And then hand animation would only be for modifying my recorded animations or my motion capture. But that's just what I'm thinking for myself, and you'll have to kind of think things through and figure out what would be the best solution for you. So anyway, that's all I had for today. It's just a kind of some things to think about in terms of animation and why it's so important. So take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.